Well, the more I go through these mafia stories and interview people and so forth, the more it seems like a lot of people ultimately end up cooperating. Now, you yourself, you didn't put anyone in prison, but you did cooperate somewhat with the feds. John A. Light, he cooperated, against John Gotti Jr. Frank Collada, he cooperated. He was in the witness protection program. The list kind of goes on and on and on. Ultimately, what percentage of people do you think cooperate versus, take their time?
All right, I think we have to make a distinction here because this is obviously something that's very sensitive to me. When a guy becomes an informant, enters the witness protection program, and starts going on trial and putting people in prison, that's one category. And Val, I've been on trial 5 times in my life. I want to tell you this. I have never, and I'll take this to my grave, I have never seen an informant, a cooperating witness, get on the stand, put his left hand on a Bible, right hand swear to tell the truth, and lie through his teeth. And that even included my brother, when my brother took the stand against my father. When somebody cooperates and becomes an informant, they do that because they don't want to go to prison. They can say all the things that they want. They can say, oh, they had a turn. They don't want to go to jail because the FBI tells them, you're going to spend the rest of your life here. You cooperate with us, we'll give you a break. That's why people become informants, okay? That's exactly why. In my case, I want to be clear. I took a plea. I took a 10-year prison sentence, $15 million in restitution, $5 million in forfeitures. There was no cooperation agreement at all in that plea. It's a matter of public record. You can go and look at it. That was it. I had done almost 4 years in prison when I was picked up in the middle of the night and brought into Chicago with this whole Norby Walters thing, okay? I had 18 months to go, maybe less, 16 months to go at my time, and I was out on the 10 years, because back then you could make parole. But even if I maxed out with good time, I had 16 months left to go. The only reason I took the stand against Norby Walters, number one, I was subpoenaed, and number two, because they threatened at that time to lock up my father and my brother because of involvement with Norby. I didn't want my father to have any more aggravation. And they had me on tape giving Norby, not me, I'm sorry, they had my brother-in-law delivering $250,000 to Norby at that time, okay, to be his partner. What happened was Norby was threatening people. I was in jail. He was threatening these athletes with using my name. I didn't know anything about that. I was in prison. When I took the stand against Norby, okay, I had first sent him a message. I said, Norby, they want to give you 16 months. Take the plea. Okay, you've been using us for 30 years in your life. Take the plea. Spare me the aggravation. Spare my brother and my father. He refused to do it. When they came in, all I said was, look, I gave the guy $250,000. It's on tape. I know Norby all my life. Yes, he was associated with us. As far as what he did, I don't know. I was in prison. That's the testimony. They had me on the stand a half an hour. That was it. Okay, so I didn't enter in a cooperation agreement and I didn't testify against anybody else. I didn't put anybody else in prison. It wasn't my thing. I want to, because you give me the opportunity to say this, Vlad, so I hope you do print it. They brought me in while I was on parole to testify against John Riggi because I had information and an informant had told them that I was John Riggi's partner. We were collecting $2 tariff on every window that was brought into Manhattan in the construction of a building. John Riggi and I were partners. I refused to cooperate against him because he was my friend. 10 days after that, they violated my parole and threw me back in prison. So all this nonsense about me being a dry snitch, it's all nonsense. Now, let me clarify this too, okay? Yes, I talk to the FBI now in general terms about stuff. I mean, I shouldn't say now. Back then, okay? Yes, I cooperate with the police now. They take me into prison. I speak to young gangbangers and stuff like that. But I want to make this clear. Nobody ever went to prison because of Michael Franzese, ever. And Norby Walters never did one day. Not one day. I knew what I was doing with Norby. I understand this stuff. I've been around it all my life. He never did 1 hour in prison. So nobody ever went to prison because of Michael Franzese. I appreciate you letting me say my piece. Thank you.
But you see a lot of other guys do it.
Yes. Yes. Listen, let me tell you something. In my opinion, the racketeering law, the Bail Reform Act, they changed everything. Because under that RICO statute, you get so much time that guys just didn't want to go to prison for that length of time. No more parole. They abolished it. You couldn't get bail. You were either a danger to the community or a flight risk. Okay, the government won. What happened was the fear of the mob was transferred to fear of the government. So guys say, hey, I'm not going to go to jail for the rest of my life. And they became informants. That's it. And in that regard, okay, the government won. They had all the tools to make people turn. And you saw, there's a great line in one of the movies, The Bronx Tale. They asked, when Sonny was asked, what's better, fear or love? And Sonny, I think, said fear. Not true, because that fear can be translated or transferred to somebody else. And that's what happened in our life. But when somebody loves you, they're going to stand by you as much as they possibly can. But when fear can be transferred to something else, and that's what happened in my former life. Fear was transferred to the government. Guys started cooperating. And it wasn't the young guys. A lot of old guys cooperated too. A lot of old guys just don't want to spend that time in prison.
Right, because since our last interview, Tekashi 6ix9ine ended up testifying against his entire gang.
Exactly.
We counted it. He helped give out over 70-something years to all the guys that he was involved with, and 2 guys are waiting life sentences right now. So, and he's on the stand, he's telling them everything, and as he, after he came out, he's playing the victim. Oh, well, these guys kidnapped me. Oh, these guys threatened my mother and everything else like that. But ultimately, what I always try to push is he only started to tell when he was facing a bunch of time himself. He put a hit out on someone that's on video that ended up involving a shooting later on that he paid for. He was getting people robbed. He was causing beef with people and so forth. And then when he got caught with a gun and stolen property and the video of him putting a hit out and he was facing 47 years, he told on everybody. And now he's, hip hop's, rat who raps about ratting. I mean, when you look at that, what do you think?
Again, he didn't want to do the time. He didn't want to go to jail. It's why these guys inform. They don't inform because they had a change of heart. I want to say this, and I'm using it as an example. Patrick asked me about Sammy the Bull and what did I think about his testimony. And I heard what Sammy said. Sammy said that John was going to turn against him and put all the weight on him, that he had to take all the weight. I'll tell you why I have a problem with that, Vlad. And that's why he testified. That's why he turned, because John turned on him in that way. I'll tell you why I have a problem with that. John and I had the same lawyer at that time. Okay, he had Bruce and I had John Jacobs. They were in the same offices. I would go up to the office and I would hear there was 2,000 hours worth of tapes on Gotti and his crew. And I listened to some of those tapes with a couple of the guys that were listening to them, right? There was no way. John was all over those tapes, saying things, admitting things. There's no way he could transfer that to Sammy. John was the boss. So I have a problem believing that John was going to lay all the weight on Sammy, because it wouldn't have been a good defense, number one. And number two, honestly, I don't think that was John's style. I really don't. But what I said to Patrick, what you forgot to ask Sammy, he testified against 35 other guys. It wasn't only John. Okay, now, I'm not going to say anything. Maybe Sammy didn't want to do the time. Maybe he had another reason. I don't know, and it's not for me to comment on that. But for me, for the most part, guys snitch because they don't want to go to jail and do that amount of time. They don't want to die in prison.
Yeah, me and Sammy had a phone call where we discussed potentially doing an interview. He's a rough guy.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that personality is still there.
Still there.
Still
you know
there.
What got me in the interview, Vlad? You know what got me?
What's that?
I got to say this because it was funny in a way. The Machiavellian mentality. Patrick asked him, he said, hey, all these murders that you admitted to, 19 murders. And he turned about and he said, well, nobody ever asked me how I felt when I did that murder. And he said, I was at a funeral and I was staring at a guy who was laying in the coffin that I killed. He says, and I was mad at the guy. Look what you made me do. That's what I cracked up at that point. It's not funny. I understand that, but I'm saying, wow, look at that Machiavellian mentality, blaming the guy in the coffin, okay, that you had to murder him. That's unique. I got to tell you that.